A quick run-through of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. For centuries, Rome was one of the most powerful states the world had ever seen. It began as a small settlement beside the River Tiber in central Italy. It grew into a republic, then an empire that controlled lands across Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. At its height, Roman territory surrounded the Mediterranean Sea, so completely that Romans called it Mare Nostrum, our sea. But Rome's story is not simply one of conquest and collapse. It is a story of political innovation, civil war, cultural exchange, military strength, economic strain, migration, and transformation. And while the Western Roman Empire fell in the 5th century, the Roman state in the East survived for nearly another 1,000 years. This is the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Rome did not begin as an empire. According to Roman tradition, the city was founded in 753 BCE, although its early history blends legend with archaeology. By the late 6th century BCE, Rome had replaced its kings with a republic, a political system in which elected magistrates, the Senate, and popular assemblies shared power. In theory, the republic rejected monarchy. In practice, political influence remained concentrated among wealthy elites. Rome's early strength came from more than its army. It formed alliances with neighboring communities, gradually extended citizenship or partial rights to some conquered peoples, and built a system that could draw soldiers and resources from across Italy. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome controlled most of the Italian peninsula. Then came its great rival, Carthage, a wealthy maritime power based in North Africa. The 3 Punic Wars fought between Rome and Carthage from 264 to 146 BCE transformed Rome. After the First Punic War, Rome gained Sicily. After the second, remembered for the Carthaginian general Hannibal's invasion of Italy, Rome became the dominant Western Mediterranean power. Following the Third Punic War, Rome destroyed Carthage and turned its territory into a Roman province. Rome also expanded eastward into Greece, Macedonia, Asia Minor, and beyond. But conquest created serious problems at home. Victorious generals gained wealth, prestige, and personal loyalty from their armies. Enormous numbers of enslaved people were brought into Italy. Wealth from conquered lands deepened the divide between rich and poor. Meanwhile, the Republic's political institutions struggled to govern an empire far larger than the city-state they had been designed for. During the 1st century BCE, political competition increasingly became violent. Reformers such as Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus tried to address inequality and land ownership. Both were killed in political violence. Rival commanders including Gaius Marius and Lucius Cornelius Sulla used armies in struggles for power. In 82 BCE, Sulla became dictator and used executions and confiscations to eliminate opponents. The precedent was dangerous. Roman soldiers were becoming loyal not only to the Republic, but to individual generals. Then came Julius Caesar. Caesar formed an informal political alliance with Pompey and Marcus Licinius Crassus, often called the First Triumvirate. As governor in Gaul, roughly modern France and parts of neighboring countries, Caesar won major military victories and built a battle-hardened, loyal army. When political tensions with Pompey and the Senate reached a breaking point, Caesar crossed the Rubicon River into Italy in 49 BCE. Civil war followed. Caesar defeated his rivals and was eventually named dictator for life, but many senators feared that he intended to become a king. On March 15th, 44 BCE, the Ides of March, Caesar was assassinated by a group of senators. His death did not restore the Republic, instead it triggered more civil war. After Caesar's death, power was contested by Mark Antony, Caesar's adopted heir Octavian, and others. The struggle ended in 31 BCE when Octavian defeated Antony and Cleopatra at the Battle of Actium. In 27 BCE, the Senate granted Octavian the name Augustus. Historians generally mark this moment as the beginning of the Roman Empire. Augustus was careful not to openly call himself a king. Rome's political culture still distrusted monarchy. Instead, he presented himself as the princeps, the first citizen, while quietly gathering decisive military, financial, and political power into his own hands. The Republic's institutions survived, but real authority rested with the emperor. Augustus created a more stable system of government. He reorganized the army, strengthened provincial administration, developed a standing military, and oversaw major building projects. Under his rule, the empire entered a long period of relative stability, often called the Pax Romana, or Roman peace. This peace was never universal or uninterrupted. Rome continued fighting wars on its frontiers. But for roughly the first 2 centuries of imperial rule, many regions experienced greater security, trade, urban growth, and prosperity. The Roman Empire reached its greatest territorial extent under Emperor Trajan, who ruled from 98 to 117 CE. At that point, Rome controlled Britain in the northwest, Spain and Gaul in the west, the Danube frontier across Central Europe, Greece, Egypt, and North Africa, and much of the Near East. But Rome was not one uniform culture imposed from above. It was a vast and diverse empire. People spoke Latin, Greek, Egyptian, Aramaic, Celtic languages, and many others. Local traditions often continued alongside Roman law, architecture, and administration. Roman roads connected military posts, ports, cities, and provinces. Aqueducts carried water. Cities featured baths, temples, theatres, markets, and forums. Roman law and citizenship created shared institutions across enormous distances. Yet Roman society was deeply unequal. Enslaved people performed essential labor throughout the empire. Women had limited formal political power, though some elite women exercised influence through family, wealth, and patronage. Citizenship carried important privileges, but not everyone possessed it until Emperor Caracalla extended citizenship to most free inhabitants of the empire in 212 CE. Rome's power depended on a combination of military force, taxation, local cooperation, commerce, and administration. But sustaining such a huge empire was costly, and the balance would not last forever. After the death of Emperor Marcus Aurelius in 180 CE, the empire entered a more unstable era. His son Commodus was assassinated in 192, leading to another civil war. The 3rd century was especially turbulent. Between 235 and 284 CE, emperors rose and fell rapidly, often elevated or killed by soldiers. Civil wars drained resources, external enemies pressured the frontiers, economic disruption and currency debasement contributed to instability. Disease also took a heavy toll. At times, the empire nearly fragmented. Separate breakaway states emerged in the west and east before being reunited. The crisis did not destroy Rome, but it permanently changed it. In 284 CE, Diocletian became emperor and introduced sweeping reforms. Recognizing that the empire was too large for one ruler to govern effectively, he created the Tetrarchy, a system of rule by 4 emperors divided between eastern and western regions. The system did not last, but the division between east and west became increasingly important. Constantine emerged from the following civil wars as sole ruler. In 313, he and his co-emperor Licinius issued the Edict of Milan, which permitted Christianity to be practiced openly. Constantine did not make Christianity the empire's official religion, but his support dramatically changed its position within Roman society. In 330, Constantine inaugurated a new imperial capital at Byzantium, renaming it Constantinople, modern Istanbul. Located on the Bosporus, it was strategically placed between Europe and Asia and closer to the empire's wealthiest eastern provinces. Later, under Theodosius I, Christianity became the empire's official religion. When Theodosius died in 395, the empire was divided between his sons. One ruled in the west, the other in the east. This division would prove lasting. The Western Empire faced enormous pressures in the 4th and 5th centuries. Germanic peoples had long lived along Rome's borders and had served in Roman armies. But movements of peoples intensified after the arrival of the Huns in Europe. In 376, the Goths crossed the Danube into Roman territory, seeking refuge. mismanagement by Roman officials helped turn this migration into war. In 378, the Eastern Roman Emperor Valens was defeated and killed by the Goths at the Battle of Adrianople, a major shock to Roman military power. Over the following decades, Roman authority in the West weakened. In 410, the Visigothic leader Alaric sacked Rome. In 455, the Vandals also sacked the city. But the fall of Rome was not a single dramatic event in which civilization suddenly vanished. The Western Empire had been weakening through a combination of political instability, military pressures, economic difficulties, loss of tax revenue, and the growing independence of powerful regional leaders and armies. In 476, the Germanic military leader, Odoacer, deposed the young emperor Romulus Augustulus in Italy. This event is traditionally used to mark the end of the Western Roman Empire, but in the East, the Roman Empire continued. From Constantinople, Eastern emperors ruled what modern historians often call the Byzantine Empire. Its people still called themselves Romans, and their state survived until Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Empire in 1453. Rome fell in the West, but it never truly disappeared. Its legacy endured in law, architecture, engineering, language, government, religion, and ideas of citizenship. Latin developed into the Romance languages Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian, and others. Roman law influenced legal traditions across Europe. Roman roads, aqueducts, monuments, and cities still shape landscapes today. Most importantly, Rome's history reminds us that great powers are not simply built by military conquest, and they are not destroyed by one cause alone. Rome rose through organization, adaptation, expansion, and force. It fell in the West through a long process of political fragmentation, military strain, economic pressure, and transformation. The Roman Empire ended, but the Roman world never stopped influencing the world that followed. If you enjoyed this history of Rome, please like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. What do you think was the most important reason for the fall of the Western Roman Empire?